Estaría bien comentarle que no se mueva mucho en lo posible, ¿no sabes? Para que no...
Como ayer.
Que lo captemos bien. Okay.
Senoras, Senoras, good morning, dear colleagues. My name is Ralf Klammer from WTH Aachen. I welcome you to the second keynote session of the ICWE 2018. And it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker. It's Antti Poikkarinen.
Yeah.
Poikkarinen.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, it's hard even for Finns.
And I think he has really an exciting topic. So it's about mixed reality. And I think the challenges for us as web engineers are quite obvious. Yeah? So how to connect augmented reality, virtual reality devices in a very programmable way to the rest of our web applications. And today Antti said he will give a presentation but also a demo. Yeah? Therefore it took also some time to set it up because he had brought with this new prototype. So he works for a company which are really developing hardware and software for mixed reality, and his title today is Mixed Reality and Programmable World. So it's your time, Antti.
Yeah, thanks.
hay muchos ejercicios para buscar otro.
Is there an adapter from USB-C to VGA? So USB-C and then VGA here.
We're looking for that.
Or then HDMI for the processors.
This is yours.
Yeah, that's mine.
Then do you what do you name this?
If there's USB-C and then VGA on this side. So this kind of adapter that it's just USB like this.
Es que no entiendo
Si
esto.
no funciona, tampoco funciona ahí.
So this talk will be about the mixed reality, which I've been finding out that not that many people actually know in this conference that well, and then programmable world, which is I think a bit more familiar for the people in this conference. And then also, in addition to my slides, I actually have a demo. But if somebody knows how to hack the Windows password, because it's been somehow resetting itself, it's not the company name anymore, it's something else, I will buy a beer at the afternoon. But I have actually a demo here from our company's latest prototype, which is really cool and would be really nice that everybody would see it. But really, the Windows have been somehow resetting the password and we don't know what it is. It works still before I left to this place. Okay, but shortly about me. So I now work in a company called Varjo. It's this kind of company which is working on mixed reality products. And that's our first product basically, what is now on the table. This kind of virtual reality headset, which also has this kind of camera see-through enablers. Then on my spare time I have been working as a researcher, so there's some publications I've been doing lately. So I try to get the PhD, as many also who are sitting here. And I've been working mostly with Tommi Mikkonen actually, with my papers. And then yeah, I'm coming from Finland, Helsinki, and Finland is there if somebody doesn't know. Probably you guys know it. Yeah, so briefly, I think, at least I think, and many others also think heavily, that this virtual reality and mixed reality will be now somehow like really coming also to the consumer markets. And it will somehow, some point form like a third computing revolution. So we are at least thinking at Varjo that like it will be totally essential part of future like professional work, but also like later on part of consumers like daily basis how they interface the computing devices. Of course now the devices are really bulky, like this, really big ones, but I think 10 years from this I think they're quite small. And then I think after 10 years people will be using laptops, desktops, the phones, and then this kind of mixed reality glasses which are light. So this is how we think. And then in this presentation I try to somehow dive into the web technologies because it's a web engineering conference. And I also try to explain a bit like how we think the mixed reality will be in the future. So I was asked this question a couple of times on this week. I didn't have these slides. I was doing them yesterday and the day before yesterday because I realized that many people don't even know what is mixed reality, so it's better to explain it. There's a nice science paper from year 1994, which is basically explaining like this kind of computing devices and interfaces, how it would be. But I think most of the people at least know what is virtual reality, and I think hopefully all of you guys and girls know what is the real world, real environment. So I think mixed reality is everything between. So at the other end, it might be only like the real world, what you see, but at the other end, everything you see or experience is generated by your computing device. And then this is a nice slide having like this kind of basic categories how people tend to like talk nowadays. So there's the virtual reality at the left side, which is basically everything is entirely like the visuals and the sounds are entirely generated by a computing device. Then there's this kind of middle ground where like you have real world, but there's some addition made, like some more small infotainment, for example. And then there's this weird animal, this mixed reality, which is that like you don't know anymore that what is real and what is not, because all the virtual stuff seems to be somehow so naturally blended with the real world. So what you see might be actually not real, or what you hear might be not real. So, but it is sounding that it is real for you. Then like some examples, I think these visuals might be familiar, at least for the people, maybe not the Vario one, which is on the right end, because that's only a couple of days old. But Microsoft made the HoloLens a few years back. Magicleap has been posting a lot of visuals, how it would look, and also we are now doing at Vario that, so we are now posting like about mixed reality since last week. So we were at the AWE conference, which is basically augmented reality conference and virtual reality conference, and we were showing our latest technology there. And for example, this demo was there, showing our best like displays and best lenses, and it was working there, but like now it seems to be somehow struggling. But yeah, we are also doing now mixed reality at Vario. And then I think this is the categories at how we see. So there were desktops in the very beginning, like how consumers started to use the computing devices a lot. Then at some point there was this Nokia Apple thing happening, and then the computing devices went to your pockets. And we are thinking that there will be this kind of third revolution coming, that also the mixed reality will be like part of like everyday life. And then I think these are all parallel, so we are not thinking that like when we make the best ever glasses which are light and easy to use for whole day, I think we are not thinking that it replaces the phones or it replaces the desktops, but it's like a third paradigm, and everybody's just okay to use 3 devices or even more devices which are a bit different. Then, as I mentioned earlier, the hardware is slightly bulky still, and for example our device is not even wireless, so it has a long cable. So we are providing most likely 10-meter cable with our device when we are selling it. So you really cannot be that mobile with it. But there are already devices like the HoloLens, which is totally mobile at least for 1 hour until the battery ends. And then Magicleap is also doing totally mobile solution for mixed reality for consumers. So there's this kind of beginning of different kind of vendors doing their own silos and how they think the mixed reality is totally different from each other. I think Magicleap is closest to this kind of consumer-friendly device, so it's really playful and this kind of most likely easy to use. HoloLens is maybe a bit more professional, Then the center one is Meta, which is also like professional one with the cable. And also our device will be like a professional one. It's not meant to be used by consumers, in the beginning at least. So this is shortly what is mixed reality. Then what is programmable world? So I think I could ask people to raise hands if they know what it is, because I'm not sure. Does everybody know it, or nobody's raising hands? I think Tommy should at least know it. Kari, yeah. Yeah, okay, so at least few people know it. So, okay, I will explain it. So, because I think Tommy was the first person to say these magical words to me, but like then when I was reading about it, for me it's just IoT which been just evolving. So this is how I see it, that it's a programmable world is an evolved IoT. And what makes it like really better, I think, is that like nowadays the low-cost chips, like they can cost like a couple of dollars only, and they can run already the full Linux stack, meaning for example Android. So whatever coffee maker or vacuum cleaner you buy, it might be a smart device. So that's one thing what's been happening in past 10-15 years. Then there's this edge computing thing happening. So I think in practice it nowadays means that like your home devices are, for example, connected to the same Wi-Fi. It might be also in some factory or workplace that some totally custom devices actually discussing through Wi-Fi network. And then this makes this kind of really efficient communication possible between the IoT devices. So they can start to actually communicate with each other, of course, if they have been made by the same vendor most likely nowadays. Then also there have been coming some standards for like device connectivity and programmability, but I think this is now happening in vendor silos. So Apple has their own, Google has their own, and they don't really like discuss with each other. So that's the current situation. And then how this thing evolves, and I think this is how the whole internet will evolve, is that like now we have this thing that like some products from some vendor can actually discuss with each other. I think the home devices, for example, are a good consumer example, like Apple HomeKit and the similar stuff from Google. But not all of the Apple's product can like really like go that like interfacing paradigm. So it's just like partially there. I think in few years it happens that like the vendors make this like more stronger, this paradigm, that like all of their products actually have this kind of stack in them, that like it's easy to program even them, like how they work with each other by consumer. And then I think at some point this magical thing happens, like I don't know which year it is, but let's say it's 2030. So I think the magical thing is something similar like the HTML when it happened. So nobody was actually expecting it, it's just a game and it boomed instantly. So I would say similar will happen with the programmable world. So you have a lot of Apple devices which you can program already somehow. You can actually do it even now with the HomeKit, the Google stuff the same. But the consumers start to use these paradigms. They can like put their alarm clock to brew the coffee because they are from the same vendor or vendor partners. But at some point something magical happens that like actually the Apple and Google devices start to discuss with each other. I don't know what it is, what are the triggers, but like that happens at some point because of course it's like just better for the consumers, and then there's some kind of like technical way of doing it. So I think that moment will be something like when HTML came, so it's just instantly booming across over every vendor. So that will be interesting. Then one crucial part, at least my opinion, of the programmable world is digital twin. So you don't just have these Philips Hue devices which are in your ceiling or some Apple TV, and then they discuss with each other when you are saying that from your mobile phone. But actually, when you use the mixed reality, you can start to see the smart devices. So if you put some kind of configuration mode on from your settings, you can actually see that the ID of the lamp when you are watching it with your mixed reality glasses, or you can see what is the song what your stereo system is playing. So I think all the smart devices will have this kind of digital enhancement So basically this kind of like extension to the real world. And I think this will be somehow normal when the mixed reality paradigm starts to kick in, because again it's like hopefully, at least at the end, easier for the consumer to control all the computing devices and like all the smart gadgets and IoT devices what consumers have in their homes. And then one thing about this programmable world. So if you think about normal users, they are not like HTML, JavaScript developers, so they don't want to program anything, but what if there would be even something easier for them to do the programming? So this is just this kind of like thinking that like something like this might also happen. So basically when you have this zillion of smart devices at your home and you would like to make some logic how they actually work with each other, and then Siri or whatever AI is not capable of doing exactly what you want, you could go to some kind of visual programming mode where you can actually see the inputs and outputs of different devices. So this might be something which is coming like top of the current, this kind of declarative programming paradigm also in the future. But it's just a guess, but this would be like some kind of more abstract paradigm than HTML, JavaScript paradigm currently. Okay, so then what is needed to be worked on? So these are again guesses, but I think they are like expert opinions. So I think in web technologies, it's nice that like there's already this kind of application paradigm where the apps are like basically hot loaded and like unloaded. Basically, when you open a website, you're actually installing in that sense the application, what is there, and when you're closing the tab, it's basically uninstalled or at least mostly like taken away from the current like local resources. So this fits nicely if you think about the mixed reality, because when you are walking around in the streets or going from work to home, I think the mixed reality application set might totally change. So you will see totally different apps at your work, at the street, and at your home. So the apps are basically location based. So the mixed reality application paradigm needs to have similar kind of system where it's easy to start any application from basically unsecure place, and then it needs to be easily to be unloaded when you pass it if the application was location based. Then also like the current like programming paradigm with HTML, JavaScript and CSS, it has been proven to be quite easy way of doing like millions or even hundreds of millions of web applications. So nobody would do the similar amount writing C++ or some other like more low-level language or a bit harder language. So basically something similar should be also coming for mixed reality, because if you think that all the consumer products will be smart in the, let's say in 20 years, then there's a need to have this kind of really simple programming paradigm that these hundreds of millions of apps can be made for mixed reality really fast. So I think these things are really good in like web technologies already. Then I have been like hearing at least these three things like many times, that like, hey, that like the mixed reality is already done in web. WebGL does it, or VRON does it, or X3D does it, or X3D DOM does it. But yeah, they are like only like small pieces which most likely will be not even used in the upcoming mixed reality paradigm. Then I think these things will be like somehow needed to be at least worked on. So there's no like this kind of clear standards how the devices and applications can connect with each other now. Maybe REST is something close, but it's a bit like simple. So I think there needs to be some kind of higher level standard for that like true programmable world to happen. Then I think there's one thing missing also if we think about the browsers and the backends. So there's not this kind of like let's say IoT runtime, except maybe Android running some web-like servers or something like that existing. So I think something like that is also missing. Maybe Android in the beginning will be the one that like it can actually run like basically any web runtime or any web servers on these smart devices, but like this kind of like specific runtime for the IoTs for the programmable world, it's of course missing. Then I think the whole mixed reality application programming model is like totally missing. So in mixed reality we have again this kind of huge field of view. We can have multiple apps running. We need like 3D layouting and animations because the apps want to look like natural. We need like visual formats. Most likely some open formats can be used for that. We need like totally new way of thinking how users interact with the applications. So it's not anymore that you just move your mouse and click something, but most likely you are pointing with the hand, or you are looking something and pointing with the hand, or you are like moving next to the application and it starts to like somehow do something. So I think the user input mechanisms will be totally different with the mixed reality apps. Then also the visual programming, it might be something that the end users might want to really have. And then the next picture is with this kind of reference operating system or stack. So I was just like putting everything with red color, like what should be changed. So if you think about Android or Windows or OS X or iOS, like basically all the stacks they have now should be somehow rewritten for mixed reality. So there's some changes, are they big or not, or are there totally new stacks to have? For example, tracking is one huge stack set where there's like a lot of work to be done. And then also like this kind of artificial intelligence with the voice commands, it's still like totally like sluggish. And also of course all this kind of like programmable world related stuff is missing. So there's like basically the operating system to run these kind of things is missing, but for sure, like for example Magic Clip is working on all of these, most likely Microsoft, Apple also, so and Google of course. So there will be most likely some kind of new kind of stack of software or stack set of software coming to actually run the mixed reality apps in the future. Then so some examples how the things will change. So as I mentioned, the inputs is actually Magic Clip's slide they showed. So they were like nicely saying that like most likely all of these will be used, and some gestures maybe are done so that you are using multiple things same time to have some kind of gesture for the application. So it will be not anymore that you just point and click or use your keyboard, but like there's a lot more that the apps will know from the user, that how the user is like next to the app, is the user looking the app, is the user pointing the app or grabbing the app. So there will be like new ways how the applications are getting the input. Then also like multiple simultaneous apps will run at the same time, so that's something new also. So it will be not anymore like, well, it's like more like in desktop, so you can have multiple windows. So in mixed reality, most likely you will have multiple apps running at the same time, and you can see each of them like running, and you can drag and drop from app to app and stuff like that. And then one big thing, of course, is tracking, which is now a really hard problem, and everybody's trying to solve it who are working on mixed reality. So we are actually using at Vario this kind of beacons. So we're using like outside in tracking because this works and it's really like precise. So we are happy with it because our partners are happy with it. But if you think that you go to the street, you cannot like have those everywhere. So you need to have this kind of inside-out tracking. So basically your device is tracking the world, maybe having some pre-processed data. So in that sense, like you can know where you are exactly. So the virtual objects will be drawn to the correct locations. But this is like a huge problem, and it's not, especially the inside-out tracking is not solved at all yet. So it's really like rough what the Microsoft is showing and what is shown by Magic Leap. Then I think this kind of thing to also to think about is that like in the future the apps might be shared, because if they're location based, it would be silly that only you see the app. But I think it will be sort of like you can share the experience with multiple users if it's this kind of shared experience app. So you can think that your web application could be like seen by multiple users same time in some table, and then they are interacting with it. So these are some like small this kind of hints to give that how the application paradigm could change in future. Okay, and then I stop being scientist or whatever I was talking about, and now I talk about our company. So our company is not doing the stuff I was showing before. At least this was said to me that please don't say that. So I can show like my company slides next, which are maybe even more interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm working for Vario, and then we are working at mixed reality stuff, and then basically our first product will be this kind of virtual reality headset, like this, and then it will have camera see-through, so there will be possibility to add this kind of plate. There's two high-resolution cameras, so you can basically see through the device, and you can see the virtual objects. So this is the company, and then our first this kind of display is branded as Bionic display. So the main thing with our product is that it is so high resolution that it is over your own eyes resolution, so you don't see the pixels anymore. So, and that's the reason why we call it Bionic display, because the human eye is funny in that sense that only place you see really like sharply is actually a couple of degrees where you look at, and the rest is really blurry, but of course you don't see it ever, and your brains are actually making you think that you see everything in detail, but actually you only see the place where you are looking at in very detail, and it's around like 60 pixels per degree. So we can read that at the area where you are looking at, and the rest we use like a lower resolution. So this is basically what you can now see with current headsets. So you can really see the pixels, and if you want to like look at something at the virtual reality, it looks like that it's not real at all. But like with our headset, these pictures are taken with camera. So with our headset, it looks like that. So the difference is rather clear. Of course, you can still see maybe some marks of the pixels, but it is really precise. So actually, it looks pretty much real what you are seeing. Then this is the first proto, but I think that's a better example already. So it looks like a normal headset, but inside we have really this kind of complex display units, which are combining basically two displays. Then I have a nice video from our mixed reality capabilities. So that is the next thing I will show, and I hope the sounds are working now on this thing. So I have plugged it in. Let's see what happens. They don't work. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nice hack.
Since we can't change reality, we change the eyes that see reality.
This is all done in real time, so you can actually have this all the time when you are using the device. These kind of graphics. So of course there was no like web technologies there, but there are a lot of like graphics technologies. So in that sense, it's pretty nice. So here's like a short, this kind of looping clip. So as you might guess, the space station is not real, but actually also the water spots on the floor, they are not real. And they are still like reflecting the artificial stuff and the real stuff. Also the chairs and the table, they are not real there. So, but actually everything looks really real when you're using the device. So it's a bit weird feeling to see this through the device because you really don't know what's real and what is not because of the resolution. Also in here, like, of course the table and the chairs are not real, but they're still casting like totally realistic shadows to the floor. The girl is real there, so even she looks a bit artificial. And also in here, like, you can see the effect. So, of course, the bit like naive way of constructing the space station makes it totally look unrealistic, but anyways, they really look that they're in the same space. So this is how the mixed reality looks now, like, but it is really so that the device is still this big, and it has a cable, and it costs most likely more than 5,000 euros. But 10 years from this, if you have glasses which are small, what do you think? Would you use them if they really like can draw this kind of visuals? Most likely you could read the text. Most likely at that point the hand tracking is already so good that you can actually type even if you don't have keyboard. So it's pretty clear that people start to use it. If the glasses are working like that, they are light, nice and cheap. So people start to buy them at some point. There's still more. Yeah, this is the transformation from basically from like yesterday the door, what we were having in the art gallery. So we are moving from space to another space. But like in this one we are moving from this kind of factory hall which is empty, having mixed reality to total virtual reality. And then this was again happening in real time. So there was one guy walking with this headset through that letter V, and then he just saw the stuff like space and the astronauts and the ISS space station. So it's pretty cool. And then, yeah, if you want to buy our device, the launch is happening later this year. And then the mixed reality add-on with the cameras, I think it's coming next year. So this is our stuff, what we do at Vario. So thank you for listening. Any questions? And then I might have the demo, but I need to still maybe use a couple of minutes. But people can at least come here and look it, even if it doesn't work, which is a bit a pity, because it would be really good to see with your own eyes.
Okay, then thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, do you see any upcoming web technologies or web standards that may be used in this context?
Yeah, so I've been doing this kind of constructive research that like, because at some point I realized that there will be like hundreds of millions of these mixed reality apps coming. So of course you need to have the easy paradigm, and that was my motivation to do this kind of thinking that if I use JavaScript, for example, to make the apps, how it would actually work. And actually my last paper is about that. You might want to actually check that one because it actually has some thinking about this topic. But yeah, I think the web application paradigm is good for this kind of light mixed reality apps. Something similar it will be not the same at all, but something similar. And of course, like there's microservices and edge computing and everything like this, it's for sure like part of this paradigm. Okay.
This is
Simple one, so what would be the first application beyond game?
Like in our case, it's easy. So we have real use cases, like real applications, not games or not any calendars, but like so our devices. Our partners are, for example, Volkswagen Group and Audi there, and Volkswagen itself as a brand, Volvo, I think Porsche, Mercedes. I think all of them are interested at least. So they use it to design the cars, for example. So they want to see the car, how it looks before it's ready, because the car dash has quite complex user interface. So they want to like try it out, and then they want to see the design. So you can think about designers using that they can actually see the thing without making any molds or any like this kind of dummy cars or dashes. So that's one place. Then one huge area is simulators. So if you think about simulators now with VR headsets, there's like, let's say, quite a lot of them, but they all have one common problem. So nobody can see the text when they are reading it because it's so low resolution. Nobody can see the dials, what they are saying. So basically, all the VR simulators are our potential customers. So are there some Ponsse from Finland or whatever, NASA from States? Like, so if they are using some VR simulator, then they are totally interested from this one. So now they need to do some kind of workarounds to make the text bigger or have some kind of big dials, which are not actually natural at all, to go around this problem. Yeah.
So I totally see how it would make sense to embed web apps inside that kind of a reality. So would it then require totally new constructs or something derived from existing constructs like iframe into I2 or something related where you'd have the same properties but transformed into 3D space instead of 2D one?
Yeah, this is exactly what people usually think, that hey, this is how we do it. Hopefully people don't use too much time in that direction. So most likely they will, well, one of my papers, I think it was second last paper, so if you have tens of apps running same time in 3D space, the mixed reality is a bit like funky from graphics perspective because the apps are moving all the time, the projection is different all the time. So most likely if you use some iframe or some alpha buffer also with the RGB colors and project the app in certain angle and give it to the composer. If you have 10 of these apps, the performance is really slow because of the context switches, and then most likely the apps are not in sync, so the projections are totally wrong. So, in my opinion at least, it will go so that like there will be some kind of new way of doing the apps, and most likely it's this kind of 3D like layouting and 3D animations and 3D format, this kind of interface. So basically you are doing a 3D scene instead of 2D buffer, and then that's the new standard to make the mixed reality apps. This is how I think it. But in the beginning I'm sure that people are using WebGL drawing with that to buffer, and then they will notice this problem that like, hey, if you have 10 of these running, they are all in wrong projection, how I come over this problem, and then at some point there will be this kind of shared scene protocol that the apps can actually move their scene to the composer, which always has the right orientation to draw the apps efficiently. So I think something like that will be coming at the end. So I think that has been this kind of core idea in my research papers all the time. So yeah, hope that was a good answer. Shared scene instead of surface-based rendering.
Okay, so more questions?
Hi. So what do you think needs to be tackled now? Is it what's most pressing? Is it the sensors or is it the graphics on the web?
Yeah, I think the core technologies are the hardest ones, like the tracking, for example. I think it's like, I would say, this kind of, if you start to now work on tracking, which is this kind of inside out, most likely you can work on that topic still 30 years from this. Because if you think that like the whole globe should have at the end like a real-time 3D world map, that the mixed reality would really work well. And I think all these companies who are now, these big companies who are working on IT, they for some reason also are putting a lot of money to 3D maps. So I think they are thinking this, that like they would have this pre-processed data from the world to ease up the tracking when you are walking on the streets. So then your device would know that where you are, because there's so much like this kind of pre-processed feature information based. You can just fetch it from the local database, which is fetched from the cloud, depending on your location, and then the device can maybe find some features from surroundings with the cameras, and then it can basically snap your world location and orientation. So I think that is like really big problem. And then one other tracking problem is how to track the fingers. So it's been not going forward that fastly, I was thinking, because 3 years ago you could play a piano with one finger already, like we were playing yesterday in the art museum. But like the guys then were saying that like, yeah, a couple of years and then you can type with the keyboard really fast, but it haven't been going forward. So that is one area. I think in there the solution might be something related to machine learning. So it's just taught this kind of algorithm which is actually knowing the dead angles from your fingers. So there's many this kind of core problems, and most of them hopefully are in that one slide I was showing with the red squares. So I think the core problems are the most difficult ones. And then, of course, vendors can solve this programmable world in their own way. And then this, when the vendors have been solving the programmable world, I think some point this magic happens that somehow it's technically possible to do something similar like HTML, that it works across all of the devices. So that is, I don't know how that can happen. Maybe somebody is more wiser on that topic here.
So where do you see the processing happening? How much performance is needed in the visor, and how much stuff happens in the cloud, and how much in the surrounding devices?
Yeah, so I think if you think about this kind of normal copy machines or vacuum cleaners, this kind of normal future IoT devices, I think most of the processing happens on the device itself. And most likely these visuals are somehow just transferred. The delta of the visuals is transferred to the headset itself. So it will go like that. But if you think about this kind of intensive graphics, then most likely the headset needs to be having at least some kind of closed unit where it can render the stuff. Most likely it's already some kind of controlled environment, like a professional place where there's some kind of machine which can stream a lot of data to the headset. But like, I think that will still somehow stay, and maybe even in the most graphics intensive thing, you still have the cable even in the future in some professional work. But yeah, I think it will go so that there will be no cables, it will be light glasses. Most of the rendering is happening on the IoT devices, but of course if you are playing some game, maybe that's rendered in your phone, or the logic is basically run in your phone and the visuals are somehow streamed from there to your headset. So I think most of the stuff should be unloaded, because there's this kind of physical limit that if you use basically more than 2 watts of power in your glasses and they're light, they will be hot. So whatever metal or material you have, you should use basically less than 1 watt of power, that it doesn't like get hot. Maybe in Spain it would still get hot, but in Finland it would be totally fine to have maybe 1.2 watts. But like, anyways, that is one limitation also in the future, that like most of the stuff is basically at least happening in your phone, which then can use a couple of more watts.
Okay. More questions? I have also one question connecting to that, perhaps it's personal device cloud, yeah, but also there's a tendency that we have more and more
Yeah, I think at least we are thinking this this kind of like, let's say, some kind of support devices or this kind of extra enhancements. Like we are thinking so that like we need to be open for them, of course, like to some limit. Then I don't see that like in there the web technologies would play some crucial role because they are most likely quite like specific devices doing only specific job. So in that sense, like at least the most simple devices would be most likely somehow custom made just for the purpose. But there's already like standardization going on this area. And the name for that place for these discussions is OpenXR. So they are actually working on this area. So they try to make an open standard how the mixed reality works and all the devices work in the future. And they are quite far already. And we are also like in discussions with them because we have quite specific needs with the headset. Yeah. But I think no web technologies may be there that much. Yeah.
Perhaps the science fiction question, this is all about us as humans, but do you think that also non-human will be equipped with this mixed reality device like animals? So you can see through the eyes of your dog, pet dog, or even that you communicate with robots, and that you have avatars which are acting on behalf of you.
Yeah, so we have been getting already some questions like this. So basically this kind of remote robot from yourself or some kind of remote eyes from yourself. Then you can already buy tracker for your cat. So when you are in virtual reality or for your dog. So when you are in your virtual reality, you don't see what's like running around you. So if you place this tracker to your cat, you can see that the cat is running in virtual reality. So you can be like not stepping on the cat's tail. So that's already happening actually because people have been having so many problems. So that's happening already. But yeah, I think all of that is somehow true. So it's happening. But of course it's like a niche thing. But I think this remote robot from yourself, I think that might be quite common in the future because there's many times a need, what we have found out, that people want to see what's happening, for example, in the factory or whatever. So they don't want to fly there to see it. But now with this one, they could actually see it with their own eyes, that's how it is. So, and it might make sense, like in big scale, that like that starts to happen. Because there have been these companies which are similar with iPad resolution already existing. So, yeah, all of that will happen.
It's known that in reality, even virtual reality, you have this motion sickness problem.
Yeah.
And is that somehow related also to the resolution of the eyes? It's not studied about that.
Yeah.
And the game for the problem.
Yeah. So mostly the problem is about the content. So if you play some game, for example, the game might be having so much moving things, or you need to move yourself a lot. So that brings up the dizziness. Then one thing is also that like how the headset is set. So people have different kind of like distance between the eyes. So actually our device is really smart because it looks where your eyes are and then it basically moves the display unit so that it's perfect for your eyes. So that's one this kind of fancy feature we have there. So that is also causing dizziness because when you are adjusting the distance between the display units with the normal headsets, it's really hard to say when it's correct. At least I cannot say it. So I need to really look the number that, hey, this is my IPD, the distance between the pupils. So then I know that this should be the correct. But like, I think the content is the main reason for the dizziness and then these wrong settings. And of course, if the tracking doesn't work, that it's stuttering or your PC is too slow, that's like you don't get the constant frame rate, which is high enough, then of course that causes dizziness. But the content is the number one. So the game makers, at least in the beginning, they didn't even understand it. So that made it like bad. But then now they have been starting to learn that how to do the content. So basically games so that the people don't feel sick when they're playing them. Yeah, it matters. Yeah. So Of course, that causes dizziness. And we try to get it like to 0 almost, so that's the goal.
Okay, so how do you envision how the demo is going on?
Maybe I try it once and then if it fails, I quietly disappear. Because it's silly that I brought it and it's really our best. Does somebody have a keyboard nearby? Because if the keyboard is somehow messed up, that might be the reason. Keyboard? It's just silly. So it's been never happening to me and why it happens now. So I was testing this device, packing the things like in Finland worked perfectly well. And now the password wasn't there. And it's really this, the password, and it just doesn't go in. I was testing the caps lock, the unlock already. They are not freezing. It's to go to the right language. You can change it there. Oh man, that's wrong. Yeah, you could appear. Yes. Well.
Wow.
I didn't love that one. The letters were so weird that they didn't even look letters. It was some really weird language over there. Because this laptop is bought from some, I don't know what is in the country. So. Maybe Singapore. Okay, so okay, I can test it now. Maybe it comes to work. Yeah, that didn't come to my mind. Yeah. The tracking might be not working, but yeah, so I don't know how much time we have. I guess 20 minutes. So 20 minutes. So people should probably queue up. Yeah, I think people should queue up. I have to go to this side. I think that tracker is going over there. I can probably set this up later for some other room. It's okay there. Just nobody should walk here. So.
Okay.
Okay. And then I haven't cleaned the lenses, they have been busy, and then there might be some bacteria on stage and me. But like disclaimer. And then please look only to that direction because the tracking is bad. And then don't go away from there to just walk back from there. So this is like our airplane demo from our partner, Bohemia Interactive. This was seen by Prince William, sorry, and then Prince Daniel also in Slush in Finland. But yeah, let's take a look. And then at the center, if it's, yeah, it works.
Oh yeah, it works very well.
Yeah, and then at the center you can see the high resolution area.
Oh yeah.
So basically, if you look on that one, then most likely you can read the text even if they are small. So you don't really see the pixels. And in this model, the screen doesn't move where you are looking at. So it's our first prototype set, what we are doing. But we are working on a work where actually, if you move your eyes, the high-res area is moving. So everything you can then is like high resolution what you're reading. Wow. Yeah.
Should I take out the glasses?
It should be okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good example where you can see the structures. Yep. Next one. Wow. Yeah, some people started to shake when they saw it. So it was so new and their mind just blew up. Yeah, very nice. So you can turn the device a bit around if you don't see the text. Device is maybe a bit badly angled because this doesn't have the headband or any this kind of helping support. So, but you should be able. Oh, now you actually went out from the tracking. So that's the reason why we do puke, that the tracking doesn't work.
Yeah.
It might be actually me doing that. Yeah. So that's it. Maybe I can try. Yep. Yeah, you should just look to that direction. Mostly at least. So do it. Okay. Yeah, one thing. Try to keep your hands like this because the trackers are here. So if you take from here, then you actually block that one. So yeah, that I didn't say. My bad. Game need to probably wait till it gets started. I can try to turn it. Yeah, now it's better. Yep. Yeah, the tracking is again away if you look so much there. Again, the tracking is blocked, so you are drifting a bit. So this device comes with the headband, but like this is a prototype, so it has all the necessary stuff. Yeah. So just take it from here, so then the trackers are not blocked.
does the eye tracking work?
Eye tracking.
You said
This one doesn't have the eye tracking. Actually, it has the eye tracking, but it doesn't have the moving screens.
Seuraavia silmiä tekee.
Siinä on se eye tracking, mutta se ei tosiaan tee tuossa mitään, kun siinä ei ole ne liikkuvat näytöt. Se on vähän haastavampi ongelma, sillä ne näytöt vielä liikkuvat. Painetaan siitä.
Hyvin toimii niin kuin silmälasien kanssa.
Ja?
Hyvin toimii silmälasien kanssa.
Joo, sitä on kyllä iterattu paljon. Se eye tracking oli tosi vaikea saada toimimaan niin silmälasien kanssa. Me tehtiin just sellainen iso testisetti, että ihan random ihmisiä. Löytyy niinku ihmisillä oudot silmät tai ollut iho.
Mulla on niinku oudot silmät, että toimii hyvin.
Joo, tää on niinku aika hyvin jo iteroitu. Move you a bit forward. Another tracking control. Sorry. You are.
You're logging there.
Yeah, if you go there, it's fine. Yeah. Again. Okay. Thank you. Se on noin paljon korkeampi tässä suunnassa. Kannattaa nyt mittareita katsoa, että se on aika... Tässä näkyy aika tarkasti siitä. This is totally virtual. Yeah. Well, you don't know how you will look. It's like it's quite real. Yeah, it's getting hot. Yeah. Yeah, it's like we don't have any cooling with that, so it overheats. Yeah. So only the center is the high resolution. There's two displays. One is high resolution. So at the center the picture is crazy. Pretty warm. Yes, that's to be a bit hot, but people are very... excuse me, you need to take it a bit like this. So the tracking is here, so you need to keep it from here. So at the center, the picture is really crisp. Like they are not too hot, but maybe 40 degrees. Yeah, you are protected. So there's like no power change, it's like all running as hot as possible. And most likely these make it cool at the end because it's even more comfortable.
Yeah, well, I would have gone in the front of the queue if I realized it was going to catch fire at the end.
Is it like some specific thing in your eye? So your Prince William himself came to see that. And he was looking at it for a long time.
That's very good. So
The tracking.
is that my fault?
Maybe you should really give it like this. Might be just one finger in one place. That's enough. So at the center of the picture is really crisp.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask you. So the high resolution part is always in the